Today, we're heading to the vast, open plains of Canada, to a city called Saskatoon. It's a story about friendship, betrayal, and how a single, smiling snapshot, a digital ghost, can reach out from the past to point an accusing finger. This is the story of how a young woman's murder was solved years later, all because of a selfie she posted just hours before she died.
Our story revolves around two young women, Cheyanne and Britnee. On the surface, they were the best of friends. But as is so often the case in these stories, the surface rarely tells you what's churning in the depths below.
Let's start with Britnee. Britnee was 18 years old, and by all accounts, she was a great kid. She was at that pivotal moment in life, standing on the threshold of adulthood, with a map of her future clutched tight in her hand. She was still in high school, but she was already a grafter. She worked not one, but two jobs to save up money, her eyes fixed firmly on the prize, college. She had dreams of working in the hospitality business, of creating welcoming spaces for people. She was driven, she was kind, and she was loved by her family. She was, for all intents and purposes, on the right track.
And then there was Cheyanne. Cheyanne was a little older, 21. Their paths crossed at school, and an unlikely friendship bloomed. They partied together, they confided in each other, and soon they were inseparable. Best friends. But Cheyanne's path was different. Where Britney's was a straight sunlit road, Cheyanne's was a tangled, thorny thicket. Public records paint a stark picture. By the age of 21, she had already racked up over 50 convictions. We're not talking about major felonies here, more a chaotic flurry of petty crimes, shoplifting, minor assaults, things like that. A life lived in a constant state of low-grade rebellion. It was also alleged that Cheyanne had a relationship with some of the heavier, more destructive drugs that were circulating in their circles. You can imagine how this went down with Britney's family and her other friends. They saw Cheyanne as a storm cloud hanging over Britney's bright future. They'd warn her, "Britney, she's bad news. You need to be careful." They saw the red flags waving furiously in the wind, but Britney was loyal, fiercely loyal. She would defend Cheyanne to anyone who would listen. "You don't know her like I do," she'd insist. "She has a good heart. She's just had a tough time." She saw something in Cheyanne that others missed, or maybe something she wanted to see. A project, a friend in need, a kindred spirit hidden beneath a rough exterior. This loyalty, this beautiful, tragic loyalty, would ultimately set the stage for the end of her life. Which brings us to one particular night, a Friday. The air was buzzing with the promise of the weekend, a familiar rhythm for the two friends. The plan was simple: go out, have a few drinks, and forget the world for a while. It was a routine they'd fallen into many times before. They got ready at one of their homes, the air thick with hairspray and music. They did their makeup, picked out their outfits, the pre-game ritual of any night out. They were laughing, excited. In that room, they weren't the good kid and the troubled friend. They were just two girls on the cusp of a fun night. And just before they walked out the door, they did what millions of people do every single day. They huddled together, cheek to cheek, angled the phone just right, and snapped a selfie. If you were to see it, you'd see a frozen moment of happiness. Britnee is on one side, a warm, genuine smile on her face. Cheyanne is beside her, a little more guarded perhaps, but smiling nonetheless. It's a picture of friendship, of youth, of a night full of possibilities. Without a second thought, Britnee uploaded it to her Facebook page, a little digital flag planted to say, "Here we are, the night is young." And then they stepped out into the night, completely unaware that this smiling photo would be the last one Britnee would ever post. It would become her final, unintentional message to the world. Their night began as planned. They hit a local bar,
The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, they were in their element, laughing, dancing, feeling that buzz of freedom. From the bar, they moved on to a house party. Here the atmosphere was a little looser, a little edgier. The drinking continued, but now other substances were introduced into the mix. They were going hard, pushing the boundaries of the night, chasing a high. But in their minds, they were still just having a good time, two best friends against the world. The hours bled into one another as they do on nights like that. 1 o'clock became 2, then 3, then 4. The city grew quiet around them as they stumbled out of the party, the artificial high of the night beginning to curdle. By now it was around 4:30 in the morning. They had been drinking and doing drugs for hours. They were, to put it mildly, wasted. Their final stop was a McDonald's. Not for food, but just as a place to land, a brightly lit island in the pre-dawn darkness. They were in the parking lot, stumbling, their words slurring, the camaraderie of the evening starting to fray at the edges. And this is where things took a catastrophic turn. The details are murky, pieced together from what came after, because the only two people who know exactly what happened were Britnee and Cheyanne. But the catalyst, the tiny spark that lit the fuse, seems to have been a phone. Cheyanne's phone. Perhaps she was trying to make a drunk call to an ex-boyfriend, someone she shouldn't have been calling. Maybe Britnee, in a moment of intoxicated, misplaced protectiveness, decided to intervene. Maybe it was just a playful, drunken joke. Or maybe it was mean-spirited. We don't know the tone, the intent, but we know the action. Britnee took Cheyanne's phone away from her. She swiped it right out of her hand. In the cold, sterile light of the McDonald's parking lot, something inside Cheyanne, already primed by alcohol and drugs, just snapped. The playful annoyance you might expect flashed into pure, unadulterated rage. How dare she? Who does she think she is to take my phone? The argument started instantly. Voices were raised, accusations flew back and forth, slurred but sharp. This wasn't a friendly disagreement anymore. It was ugly, personal. The toxicity that had been simmering beneath the surface of their friendship for so long finally boiled over. And then, violence. Cheyanne lunged at Britnee, a fist connected with a sickening thud. Britnee, smaller and caught completely off guard, stumbled back. Cheyanne didn't stop. She hit her again and again and again. It was a frantic, brutal assault, overpowering Britnee completely. Britnee was on the ground, dazed, hurt. The fight should have been over, but for Cheyanne, it wasn't. Consumed by a rage that had now eclipsed all reason, all friendship, all humanity, she took the next irreversible step. She was wearing a braided black belt. In one fluid, horrifying motion, she unbuckled it, pulled it free from the loops of her jeans, and wrapped it around Britney's neck. She pulled, hard. Britnee fought. Of course she fought. She clawed at Cheyanne's hands, at the belt constricting her airway. She kicked and struggled, fighting for her life in a desolate parking lot against the person she had called her best friend just hours before. But Cheyanne, fueled by a potent cocktail of rage and intoxication, was stronger. She just held on, tightening her grip, refusing to let go.
And then, the struggling stopped. Britney's body went limp. Cheyanne finally released the belt, panting, the red mist of her anger slowly starting to clear. But Britnee wasn't moving. She called her name. Nothing. She shook her. Still nothing. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierced through the haze. Her friend, her best friend, was lying motionless on the asphalt. She might be dead. What had she done? Now, at this moment, Cheyanne had a choice. A clear, definitive choice. She could have scooped Britnee up, thrown her in the car, and sped to the nearest hospital. It was a chance, however slim, to save her friend's life. It was a chance to do the right thing. She did not take that chance. Instead, her mind, scrambled by fear and self-preservation, went somewhere else entirely. She managed to get Britney's lifeless body into her car. She got behind the wheel, her hands shaking, and peeled out of that McDonald's parking lot, leaving the scene of her crime behind.
Her first stop wasn't the hospital. It was her aunt's house. Imagine being that aunt, being woken up at some ungodly hour of the morning by your frantic, wasted niece banging on your door, and then hearing the words tumble out of her mouth, a panicked, incoherent confession. "I beat up my friend. I choked her. She's not waking up." The aunt, confused and alarmed, went outside, and there, in the passenger seat of Cheyanne's car, she saw the shape of a person, slumped against the window, unnaturally still. It was Britnee. The aunt wanted no part of it. This was a nightmare delivered to her doorstep. She told Cheyanne, in no uncertain terms, to leave. "Get out of here. I don't want this here." I can't say I blame her. What do you do in that situation? But it presented Cheyanne with another choice. Choice number 2, the police station, the hospital, anywhere that could offer help or justice. Again, she chose neither. She got back in the car and drove. She drove away from the city lights, away from any potential help. She drove out towards the edge of town to a bleak, desolate area near a landfill. There, by the side of the road, she stopped the car. She pulled Britney's body out and dumped her in a ditch. She left her there, alone in the dark, and drove away. She went home, crawled into bed, and passed out. The next morning, Cheyanne woke up. She would later claim she had a total blackout, that she remembered nothing from the argument onwards, a convenient veil of amnesia. But she definitely noticed one thing was missing: her phone. So what does she do? In an act of either supreme foolishness or chilling calculation, she logs on to Facebook. She goes to Britney's profile page, the very page still displaying that smiling selfie from the night before, and she posts on her wall. The message reads, "Hope you got home safely. I need my phone." Let that sink in for a moment. Britney was not home safely. Britney was lying dead in a ditch, put there by the very person asking about her well-being. While Cheyanne was crafting her digital alibi, a passerby made a horrifying discovery. The police were called, a crime scene was established, the body in the ditch was soon identified as 18-year-old Britney, and an investigation into her murder was launched. The police had very little to go on at first. The scene where Britney was found was remote, but they did find one crucial piece of evidence lying near her body, a braided black belt, the murder weapon. The first step in any investigation like this is to trace the victim's last known movements, so the police turned to social media. And there it was, the last thing Britney ever did online. That selfie, posted just before she went out. A picture of her, smiling, with her best friend, Cheyanne. Instantly, Cheyanne became a person of interest. The police went to question her, which, in a darkly ironic twist, wasn't hard to do. It turns out she was already in custody for a completely different, unrelated crime she'd committed since the murder. I told you her life was chaotic. In the interrogation room, Cheyanne decided to lie. She spun a story. She admitted they went to the house party, yes, but she claimed that afterwards they went to a place called the Colonial Pub and Grill. She told the detectives they met a guy there and that this mysterious guy in Britney had dropped her off at her uncle's house later that night. A neat, tidy story that put her far away from the crime. It was a lazy lie and it fell apart almost immediately. Detectives pulled the surveillance footage from the Colonial Pub and Grill for the entire night. There was no sign of Cheyanne or Britney. They checked with her uncle. She never showed up. 2 lies, struck down in quick succession. The police knew she was hiding something. They were suspicious, deeply suspicious. But suspicion isn't evidence. Meanwhile, Cheyanne, perhaps trying to overcompensate,
began a campaign of public mourning on Britney's Facebook wall. She posted messages dripping with false sentiment. Things like, "I miss you. You were in my dreams last night." And the most audacious one of all, "I miss you so much. I wish heaven had visiting hours so I could come see you." She was performing grief for an audience, all while harboring the secret of being the cause of it.
But her performance wasn't convincing everyone. Remember the aunt? The one who saw Britney's body in the car? She had talked. Secrets like that, they don't stay buried. Rumors started to ripple through their community. Whispers that Cheyanne had shown up at her aunt's house in a panic on the night of the murder, confessing she'd hurt Britney. Word eventually got back to Britney's devastated family. They, of course, took this information straight to the police. Now, the investigators had a powerful witness account that placed Cheyanne with Britney's body after the fight. It corroborated their suspicions. They were almost there, but still, it wasn't quite enough. It was a witness who saw the aftermath, not the act itself. They couldn't place Cheyanne at the moment of the murder with undeniable physical proof. Frustratingly, they didn't have enough to secure a conviction. And so, they couldn't make an arrest. And then, the case went cold. 2 years passed. 2 long, agonizing years for Britney's family. 2 years of knowing, in their hearts, who was responsible, but seeing no justice. The police file remained open, but active leads had dried up. Cheyanne was walking free, living her life, while Britney's was a memory, frozen at 18. It seemed like she might actually get away with it. But cold cases have a way of thawing. One day, a detective on the case decided to go back to the beginning, to review every single piece of evidence, every photograph, every statement, one more time. Sometimes a fresh set of eyes is all it takes. He picked up the file and began to leaf through it. He saw the crime scene photos, the autopsy reports, the witness statements, and then he came to the selfie. That smiling photo from the beginning of the night. He'd seen it a dozen times before. It was the photo that made Cheyanne a suspect in the first place. He looked at it again. Britney, happy and vibrant. Cheyanne, smiling beside her. He looked closer at Cheyanne, at her outfit. A dark top, jeans, and around the waist of her jeans was a belt. He zoomed in on the image. It was black. It was braided. Boom. It was the exact same braided black belt that had been found lying in the ditch next to Britney's body. The murder weapon. She was wearing the murder weapon in a photograph taken by her victim just a few short hours before she used it to kill her. It was the final, undeniable link. The silver bullet the police had been searching for 2 years. It wasn't just a witness statement anymore. It wasn't just suspicion. It was Cheyanne in a photo with the instrument of death before the act was committed. Her own vanity, her own participation in this mundane ritual of a night out had become her undoing. With that, the police finally had what they needed. Cheyanne was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The digital ghost in that selfie had finally spoken, and its message was clear. In the end, Cheyanne didn't go to trial for murder. She took a plea deal, pleading guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter. For strangling her best friend to death and dumping her body in a ditch, she was sentenced to just 7 years in prison. 7 years. For a life full of promise cut brutally short over a mobile phone. It's a stark, unsatisfying end to a story that began with a smile, was captured in a flash, and ended in the darkest way imaginable. A reminder that the people closest to us hold the most power to build us up, and sometimes to destroy us completely. That's all for this episode of Unbelievable. Join us next time as we explore another story of a single moment that changes everything. Until then, I'm Tom. Stay safe.